Earlier this year, me and my brother were house sitting for someone who worked with our mother. This happened the same night our grandmother passed away. After that happened, we stayed at our house a bit. After we cleansed ourselves, we had a relatively peaceful night. We just ate and played games. Then it was finally time to go to bed. In the room I was sleeping in, I saw on the door a strange mirror that had a prayer written on it. Another strange thing that sort of creeped me out was behind the door, there was a painting of those little baby angels. I think they're called cherubs. The angel in the painting was smirking at me whilst making a shushing gesture. I got over it and just lay down. I spent the next hour just watching stuff on my phone, and nothing really odd was happening. Then, I sort of got like a cold chill up my spine. At the foot of my bed, I started to hear this old rugged breathing. I thought it was my brother, so I screamed out his name. Then my brother shouted back from the other side of the house. I started really panicking as the breathing got louder. As the breathing got louder, I felt a really evil presence getting closer and closer. I was feeling this strange sense of dread and fear. I couldn't move. I was like stuck because I was so scared. I started yelling, "Get away! Get out! Get out!" When it finally stopped, I screamed for my brother to come help me. He let me sleep out in the living room with him. About 2 weeks later, my parents asked me what happened at the house because my brother had told them about me freaking out. My auntie said it was probably your grandmother visiting you. I really don't think it was. If my grandmother was visiting me, I don't think I would have had that sense of impending doom. Maybe it was my grandmother, but still it was really freaky. This happened to my sister about 15 years ago when she was in high school, and I was in middle school. Our mom worked as a house cleaner, and always became good friends with everyone whose homes she cleaned. One of the homes was owned by an older couple who had no kids, but had a huge house and a really nice pool that they always invited me and my siblings to come swim in. The husband worked as a COO of a large airline company, and they lived in a really nice neighborhood on a large lot with a forest of trees. When you were in their backyard, you couldn't see any other houses at all, just trees. It felt really secluded and almost spa-like, with a waterfall and a short iron fence, so you had good views of the forest. Their house was really angular and architecturally interesting, with multiple levels made from walls of stone, even on the inside. Pretty much every room had a huge floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the backyard and gave great views during the day. At night, however, the reflection from the inside lights prevented you from seeing out, so it was always a little unnerving to walk by them, since you couldn't see what was out there. The couple also decorated with old Native American art and masks, which was a little creepy to a middle schooler, but the couple wasn't creepy, so I never got too scared. They had an older golden retriever dog named Samson that lived up to his name and was massive, but had a sweet and gentle temperament. They also had recently rescued a husky mix named Sadie, who was quite the opposite. Psycho Sadie, as we so lovingly called her, had intense separation and stranger anxiety. She would destroy their house when they left her inside, jump their short fence if they left her outside, and if they took her with them to errand runs, she would destroy their car and howl nonstop until they returned. So, since they were wealthy and had extra money, they would pay for me or my sister to come over and dog sit while they went out. We got paid $20 an hour, so we were always excited to go over there and watch their cable and swim in their awesome pool. Normally, everything would be fine and both dogs would just lay around, but occasionally, Sadie would realize I was a stranger and go nuts and start barking at me. One time, she backed me into a corner and would not stop barking, and I watched her eyes literally turn red. I was convinced she was going to attack me, but she eventually calmed down. After I got up on a couch and showed her how big, not really, I was, but I digress. This particular incident happened over Easter weekend while the homeowners were out of town for 2 days. They were paying my sister to stay there over the weekend, and I stayed with her the first night because it was a big house and kind of scary to stay there all alone, and we stayed up late watching chick flicks and eating junk food. The next day, we swam in their pool and hung out, but for some reason I didn't spend the night again, and I'm so glad I didn't, because what happened that night scarred my sister for life. It all started when my sister was working out on their treadmill. Their workout room was on the bottom floor of their home, which was a walkout basement. Just outside of the room was a huge sliding glass door that opened to their patio and pool. She had the TV on in their workout room, watching the 10 Commandments that is always on the night before Easter. As she was running, she thought she heard the house alarm beep like it did whenever a door was opened. She stopped the treadmill and went to look around and saw that the sliding glass door was now open. Now, this door is huge and there is no way it could have possibly opened by itself, so she instantly freaked out. However, the dogs were just laying there in the workout room, and she figured they would have gotten up to investigate if someone had come inside, since they have those kinds of instincts, and because Sadie was so schizo and hated strangers. So, she made excuses that she had accidentally left the door open, and she must have imagined the beep of the alarm, and it could have all just been the TV or the treadmill. She closed and locked the door and went back to working out, but a couple minutes later, she had the distinct feeling of someone watching her. She looked around, but didn't see anyone. She finished her workout, but couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, so she decided to just go to bed because she was a little creeped out and just wanted to forget about it. She went around and made sure all the doors were locked. The owners didn't give her the alarm code, so she couldn't set it. Then, she took a shower and locked herself in the guest room with both dogs, just in case, and eventually, she fell asleep. A couple hours later, she awoke to both dogs growling at the door of the room. Now, it was fairly normal for Psycho Sadie to growl and bark for no reason, but Samson had never barked or shown any signs of aggressiveness at all, so immediately, my sister knew something was up. She was shaking and trying to convince herself that the dogs had just heard an animal and that it was nothing. But then she heard that dreadful door alarm beep. She called my dad in a panic, crying and screaming, and he told her to hang up and call the police while he was on his way over. She called the cops, and my dad made the 15-minute drive in under 5 minutes. When she opened the bedroom door to go let my dad in the house, the dogs took off running and barking through the house and downstairs to the basement. My sister ran screaming all the way through the house to the front door to let my dad in, and he took a quick look around the upstairs levels with his gun, but didn't see anything unusual. The police arrived a few minutes later and looked around and found that the back gate was open, as well as the sliding glass door again, but not enough to let the dogs out, just barely, like it had been slammed shut and bounced back open a little. They said it did look like someone had entered the home through the sliding glass door because the lock had been tampered with, but they determined that whoever it was hadn't stolen or disturbed anything. when my dad asked why someone would break in and not do anything, especially with the dogs locked up. The police said that they had been notified by the homeowners earlier that month that the husband had received a death threat because of some decision he made at his job that put a lot of people out of work. They had gone to the police about it, but didn't bother to tell my sister to keep an eye out for anything suspicious. Thanks a lot for the heads up. Needless to say, we never dog sat for them again, and then moved out of state within a few months because he lost his job, and he deserved it. When I was about 12, and my sister was 15, our neighbor moved into a huge expensive house across the street. He was in his late 40s and married to a pretty young woman. They seemed like a very nice couple, and my parents made friends with them right away. That summer, our neighbor asked my older sister to house sit for them and feed their dog and birds while they were away on vacation. They offered her the job because they figured that, as a young teenager, she could always use a little bit of extra spending money. I remember that they offered her an unusual high amount, I think like $1,000 for a week. She of course said yes, and all but moved into their house for the week, excited about the independence. The neighbor would go on to offer my sister the same job for the next couple of years, maybe once or twice per season, until she was about 17. Then they offered the job to me. I couldn't understand why they would suddenly switch sitters, but according to my dad, the neighbor had confided to him that he knew for a fact that my sister had spilled root beer on their sofa and not cleaned it up. She had just put a pillow over it and left it there. My dad of course apologized and offered to pay for it, but the neighbor said it was alright and that from now on, I would be taking the job. So, I went over to be briefed on the house. The neighbor asked me to come at a time when his wife was away at work, so my dad, a protective father even though this man was a good friend, came over with me. He seemed surprised to see my father. While our neighbor was teaching me mundane things like the house code and which door to enter from, he mentioned the fact that I could sleep in the master bedroom if I so desired. He said that my sister had slept there too. He told me that was the best option because there was a very large shower that I was also welcome to use, and also that the sheets are 600 count Egyptian cotton and perfect for sleeping naked. I politely thanked him, and then things got a little weirder. As he was showing me the food I was allowed to eat in the fridge, he pointed at the television and informed me that he had every single channel available. Every single channel. Even, he said, all the dirty ones. He went on to laugh about how I was welcome to watch the dirty channels as well. He said that in front of my father, I was 14. My father laughed, but inserted one of those very firm, "she won't be doing that" type of things that dads do so well. The neighbor laughed too, and then said something along the lines of, well, maybe she wants to. If she does, that would be fine. How would we know? We laughed again. I had always been closer to my parents than my sister had been, so while I was getting paid the same amount of money to house sit, I decided not to stay over. I would come over twice a day to pet and feed the dog, and put the radio on for the birds. I didn't touch a thing in the house, and was sure to be very respectful because of what my sister had done. Fast forward 6 or 7 years to now, my dad and the neighbor haven't talked in years. They ignore each other or give each other dirty looks from across the street. I would ask my dad why, and he would tell me it was none of my business, but I was a little sad that his friend and him were no longer talking, thinking that it was just a minor argument that had blown out of proportion. It was not. Eventually, My dad told me that this friend of his had one day called him from his vacation in Barbados. When my dad answered the neighbor, he was talking angrily, saying, "I need you to go across the street and kick someone out of my house." My dad was confused, and the neighbor elaborated. He had his nephew visiting from down south, and the neighbor had specifically told his nephew that his drug-addicted girlfriend was not allowed in the premises. The neighbor informed my dad that his nephew had not listened to him, and that the girlfriend was over there right now. My dad asked how he could possibly know that, and the neighbor told him. He had installed cameras in every single room of the house.